Do live abroad promoters really know what poor in America means? Or is it just a pretense for middle class folks so they can keep peddling to quote unquote poor North Americans this fairy tale of everlasting happiness abroad? They're going to keep you poor for as long as they can continue with the shenanigan of you buying into the fairy tale. Here's what we mean. Hello and welcome to our Retire Early lifestyle. Generally speaking, poor people in America are the homeless, the drug addicts, and the lazy people that receive benefits from the government. That's the real poor folks, and they aren't moving abroad because why? They can't afford it. Let me repeat that. Actual poor people in America are not moving abroad, okay? Welcome to the charade of the century. As long as they, and they is the Rams, the vloggers, the mainstream media, and vested interests, can keep you poor in your own mind, worrying about money, they all will continue to profit off of our gullibility. Okay, so now that we have set the proper perspective, we just want to say that we do understand that there may be people struggling financially in America, and so we are not discounting that. But struggling people on fixed incomes living a middle-class lifestyle in America and the homeless poor living in cars and tents are two different things, okay? Struggling with money matters is a part of life for most people. And it is usually those folks who have not put on their creativity, possibility caps, and have not embraced the frugal life. These types of middle-class Americans often do struggle, and it can be challenging for some people. They may be on the lower middle-class pay scale, and so again, we're not discounting anyone's financial situation. But let's talk about that. So it's true. People that are struggling financially are enticed to move abroad because they're told they'll have a better quality of life in a cheaper country. Blah, blah, blah. The Pied Pipers blowing their horns. But the biggest mistake we see is this.
The biggest mistake a person could make on a fixed income or even a semi-fixed income is to follow the leader. The way that this video making is designed is to say, look, you can come in this spot and you think that sounds great and you can live on this amount. You see them all over the internet, retire in, name a country on $960, and of course, how many other people are watching the video, and you're telling them to go specifically to this spot. And even if only 1% of the people that watch the video show up, it doesn't even really take all that many people to show up and all of a sudden totally change the pricing structure and everything.
Have you ever wondered why the talk of the town by many people now is moving to Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, or Albania, or you name the country? It's because the broken trail of overspent, overused, over-touristed ram places like Spain, France, and Portugal has gotten too expensive, and Thailand and Mexico are getting that way too. And now they're moving to the new, cheaper countries. In fact, people are leaving Thailand for Vietnam in droves. Take a look at this. Are some expats starting to leave for Vietnam? This person recently had lunch with a big insurance company for expats in Thailand. He said each week they get 5 requests from retired expats to move their health insurance to Vietnam. That's over 20 requests a month. And if this is consistent with the 5 other insurance companies in Thailand, the figure rises to 120 expat requests a month. Now, that's telling. So what do you think is going to happen to Vietnam? Here's what one expat has to say in just the 2 years he has lived in Da Nang, Vietnam.
All right, so today we're with Dave. He's from the UK, and he's a bit pissed, I think, about the situation here in Da Nang. So how long have you been here in Da Nang?
A couple of years.
Yeah. How did you see the tourism change the past few years here?
There's probably 3 times as many tourists here now as there was last January. So also the rental apartments have gone up by 30%. Since I first came here, the place is not the same. And it's primarily to do with YouTubers really making lots and lots of videos about the place. All the rents have gone up. We're getting a lot of undesirable people in now that we weren't here before. And frankly, I wish they'd stop. It's not the place it was. And I put most of that down to YouTube and TV.
And in the past 5 years, overall increase has been over 50%. From 21 to 25, Da Nang's rental prices have increased by approximately 53%. And usually these percentages are underreported, and the actual percentage is much higher. And so we're seeing the typical pace of price increases accelerating because of even more demand and of the constant peddling of this country. Now, we're not picking on Vietnam, it's just where many people say they are enticed to move to now. It's got high demand. The city's growing popularity among tourists and expats has increased the demand for both rental and ownership options, particularly in high-end segment. Keeping in mind that Americans are considered poor in the USA are going after the high-end apartments. There is always someone with more money than you willing to pay higher prices in Vietnam. So are poor people moving abroad? No, no, and no. Now here's something these country peddlers won't tell you, and it's this. Americans do not fare well in some of these countries that have bad water, and especially those Americans that are going for the high-end real estate. Water quality in Vietnam, including areas like Da Nang, faces significant challenges due to pollution from industrial, domestic, and agricultural sources. Many of the rivers and water bodies are contaminated. Power outages in Da Nang, as well as in other parts of Vietnam, have become increasingly common. The country has faced significant challenges in maintaining a stable electricity supply due to various factors. Now, Da Nang is considered the most livable city in Vietnam, and yet it gets some real infrastructure issues like waste and wastewater problems, even though it is the most livable city in Vietnam. So Vietnam is a work in progress, and it has a lot of work to do, okay? Help us understand something. It appears that some of the people that call the U.S. administration a dictatorship are the ones moving abroad, and they are moving to Vietnam. Well, Vietnam is a communist dictator country? Yes, Vietnam is a communist dictatorship. The country operates under a one-party system with limited freedoms for its citizens. So now that you know the real Vietnam, let's get back to the expat inflation. What are you going to do when more and more North Americans are enticed to move to Vietnam and the rents skyrocket? Will that be okay with you? This is what typically is called foreigner inflation. Foreigner inflation is real, and it will happen because it has happened in every single country that eventually becomes overpeddled by the Rams. Here's what foreigner inflation is in a nutshell.
When you look at the prices and what they're doing in a place like Ecuador, let's talk about the inflation. The inflation that you saw here was directly and 100% related to the influx of newbie travelers and foreigners that, as well-meaning as they are, for one reason or another, is just a certain amount of traffic that is built up in a specific area that causes prices to just balloon. This is the way that foreigners come in and totally take over an area and promote it to other foreigners, in Western countries as seemingly a bargain, whereas to the local rates are actually 2 to 3 times as high in many cases. Now, expats from America that came down here and literally couldn't afford it and had to leave. And many people had to leave because of the skyrocketing prices And so what that does is it just blocks out a huge sector of the population, and then only those from the very largest of cities and most expensive of cities in America still consider it, more economical than where they're from. So this is an ongoing thing that it's a very huge risk for especially people on a fixed income.
We just think people should consider all their options, that's all. I mean, you don't want to be running low on money or getting priced out because you move to a country where everyone else is going to, right? So what are your options? Well, you can stay in the USA and move to a lower cost city and learn to adjust to your income by learning new ways to be frugal and industrious. That's what we're doing, and we'll talk more about that in a later video. Well, another thing you could do is you could have $3,000 to $5,000 saved up just in case you get priced out and you have to buy a ticket home. Or you can stay outside of the expat neighborhoods and you can go local so you can find a local priced apartment rather than a foreigner rent inflated apartment. And lastly, you can put all your ducks in a row. Could it be that we Americans are moving to these cheap countries because we have our priorities out of line? I mean, we need money to live on. We need to have purpose and meaning in our life. We need to have good health. We need to have good relationships. And we need to have love of family and God. But none of this is in the right order. What is your idea of having well-being or contentment in life? How would you put your life in order? In other words, escaping poverty in America is not moving to a third world country because we think our money will go further. Even though that may happen for a small percentage of the people initially, but eventually it all comes a-crashing down just like Humpty Dumpty, and at that point you won't be able to put it back together again. So let's just get that out of the way. We have to get our priorities in order, and when we do that, we mysteriously become wiser and better stewards of what we do have. In addition, wise words of wisdom say that making important life decisions only based on money considerations is bound to leave some nasty surprises in the wings. All we're doing when we move to a lower cost country is looking at the money side of this equation. But what about everything else we just told you about Vietnam? Do those things not matter? As long as you can live in a luxury apartment, that's all that matters? That would be like a nomad capitalist with sticks up his nose, or a wealthy person that is a slave to communism. You're just a rich slave. Well, we're not buying into it. What type of lifestyle do you think you're going to have living in Vietnam? Do people even think about these important issues before they move abroad? The typical average rent that expats pay in Vietnam is about $500 now. 5 years ago, it was about $250. That's 100% increase, folks. Have you thought about how much more the rents are going to go up in the next 5 years with the current way Vietnam is being pumped? Average rent for expats in Da Nang are 1 bedroom, $300 to $500, 2 bedroom apartment, $350 to $700, and it says that most of the Americans are going for the luxury apartments, which are $700 to $1,500. So you're looking at the same 1 bedroom apartment, let's say, that's $300 to $500, and the 2 bedroom apartment being $800 to $1,000 per month in just the next 5 years. Will you be ready for that? Grocery store prices, Mercado, produce, and eating out will also cost more. And while some people will scoff, remember that it's the poor crowd trying to be rich abroad that will be affected the most, not the already wealthy. Again, we have lived through the foreigner inflation in Ecuador, and we're just being real with you guys and gals. So at that point, we have to ask ourselves, do you want to be poor in Vietnam or poor in your own country? Because the price trajectory of these cheaper countries like Vietnam and others are going to the moon, and quote unquote poor Americans will be stuck right in the middle of it. We make these videos to show you something you're not seeing, and quite frankly, the standard perception we get on the internet about moving abroad is a charade. It's the lie of the century. If rent prices have gone up 53% in just the last 5 years in the Vietnam cities, then we know for sure they will at least do that again. But wait, Vietnam is getting even more traction now from the fairy tale peddlers than ever before, and we see it going up 100% or more, just like Portugal, Spain, and Greece did in 5 years.
There's a lot of places still right now as we speak that are very much in the limelight on the internet, and that is specifically happening. And even if you think, well, I can afford that and I have a budget, the bottom line is that there is an underlying consequence to groups of people collectively showing up, especially in very small locales like small little beach towns or what have you, or any small locale, or even cities as big as Cuenca. If they're pumped hard enough and long enough, the same thing will happen.
So we just want to say this: don't let anyone tell you that you're poor in America, and if you just moved abroad, all your troubles will disappear. We can't escape poverty when it is a state of mind. We just bring it with us and pretend like our life is better because we're living around a bunch of poor folks barely eking out a living in their own country. If it were not a mindset, we would not do such a thing. This charade has got to end. If moving abroad is making the majority of Americans so happy and content inside, then riddle me this. Why do the majority, 75 to 80% of expats, come back home? So then, knowing this percentage, doesn't that make you want to consider the high possibility that you're also in this same camp of the majority that return home? Again, we have to stop burying our heads in the sand and face the reality of this hoax. The bottom line is, from everything we know and what we share with you, is this has got to be the biggest mistake people make. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.